Well, first of all, the expectation from the policy point of view is that we go from what's still a relatively small industry, even though it's already sizable and mature, into an extremely sizable global industry. At the moment, the industry is as we know, started off in Europe. It's reached a kind of level of maturity in Europe. It's reached a level of price competitiveness that makes it one of the most competitive kind of large-scale energy sources in the world. But now it really needs to go global, and we're talking about going to something like maybe a terawatt of power by 2050, according to the expectations of the big international organizations like the IEA and IRENA and the World Bank and other people. So we're talking about a massive ramping up. So I think for the next 10 years, we'll see quite a large increase, but then we need to put everything into place in these 10 years so that we can have a much more kind of exponential ramping up between 2030 and 2050. And really, our responsibility as an industry and our opportunity is huge, because the world is literally relying on offshore wind as being one of the main kind of building blocks to meeting the climate targets.
And so when you talk about ramping up and making it happen, what needs to happen for that to happen?
So I think the main, starting from the top, the main thing is policy. There need to be national and regional policies in place to enable the pipeline of projects to build up faster and to get to construction faster. So just to give an example, the UK, which has been one of the most successful offshore wind markets in the world, the most successful offshore wind market in the world. It took fully 10 years between signing the leases for the round 3 areas with the Crown Estate and those projects going into construction sort of now and having their CFD and going into construction. Now, that's 10 years. If we're going to go to the kind of ramping up that we are kind of foreseeing and that the international organizations are expecting, that needs to go faster. And the question at the moment, I think it's interesting, if you're in this industry at the moment compared to kind of 5 or 10 years ago. When I first started looking at offshore wind, people used to say there wasn't enough money, and how do you convince investors to get into offshore wind? And now, in fact, there's plenty of money, and there's plenty of people who'd like to come into offshore wind. And we're talking about financial investors, we're talking about large oil and gas companies. There's lots and lots of players who are trying to come into the market. But there's simply not enough projects, because the whole development of the project pipeline, I'm talking about bankable projects with contracts, is not going fast enough.